Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on partnership design. My name is Bart Dornerit, and I'll be presenting you today about the process of partnership design and the tool I've developed to help facilitate better conversations and thus better designs for partnerships. So my name again is Bart Dornerit. I am founder of Source Institute. Source is dedicated to promoting entrepreneurship education. We do so predominantly by peer-to-peer learning tools. We build learning platforms where entrepreneurs can learn from each other. We also design and deliver experiential workshops where entrepreneurs can learn about the principles. And we create visual business tools to help entrepreneurs come to grips with the most common problems that they face in designing their ventures. So today we'll be talking about partnership design and partnerships as they relate to designing collaborations between business models. And I'll be going through a presentation. And in this presentation, I'll be touching upon the following points. First, I'll start off with some of the context and problems I see in partnerships and the opportunities that are still out there. Then I'll go into the explanation of some tools that you can use for facilitating partnership conversations and coming to better outcomes, which is a bit of theory. And then we'll move into a case I've worked on in an actual research project between two collaborating entrepreneurs, and I'll use this case to highlight the process of designing a partnership. And that'll sort of conclude my presentation, and at the end of my presentations I can take some questions because I left the Q&A box on Google Hangouts open for you. So when I'm finished with my presentation, I'll have a look if there are some questions and I'll try to answer them live. If you're coming in late or you're watching this after the recording, then I'll also leave my details where you can get in touch with me if you have any questions that come up in the near future. I'd also like to mention my collaboration with Ernst Houtkamp of Scherpestellen in creating this presentation. He's been a real great source of help in helping me get my sort of groundwork into the presentable form it is now, and I couldn't have done it without him. So without further ado, I'd like to kick off this presentation. From what I see in partnerships is that they're commonly considered as like the gray area of innovation. It's a bit of like considered to be like something dull, something related to business type of relationships, people in suits, dealing with hard infrastructure and tough negotiations, and they're not as creative and as free as the idea of creating new products and launching them to new markets and new customers that the product developers get to work on. So partnerships are generally, I think, sort of undervalued in their potential because they actually hold like a huge explosive innovation potential that is not fully utilized by practitioners at the moment. And I think through highlighting a bit about the process and giving some tools that we can lower the barriers for practitioners to actually take a partnership into consideration as one of the opportunities or ways they have of actually achieving their innovation, right? So not stepping over it. And this explosive innovation potential, it comes to light when you see, brilliant examples like that of Nespresso in their collaboration with Krups. So Nespresso is a Nestlé subsidiary which delivers a perfect cup of espresso coffee at the push of a button, where Nespresso, of course, as a fast-moving consumer goods company, delivers that quality coffee. And Krups, famous for its durable kitchen appliances, its quality hardware, delivers the machines that actually produce this coffee. And you wonder, these big brands and these big egos, what process they might have gone through in actually being able to come up with an agreement on their combined presence in the market and on this packaging. I mean, a lot of complexity must be involved there to achieve such a great feat and such a great business model together. Despite all these egos and complexity, if you really look at the essence of a partnership, you'll find that the basis of each partnership is the quote-unquote simple solution of just providing something that delights customers and provides a better experience for them. So where one partner might be able to deliver, part of the experience, and the other partner the other part of the experience, and combined you'll get more like a whole offering to a customer that will increase their satisfaction and delight them. And quite honestly, like the things that delight customers, over history and in the future will likely not change that much. People always look for faster ways of delivery, or a broader selection, or lower price points, and things that enhance their convenience. Right? There are always these factors that remain, and that you can use a partnership for to bring to your customers. So once you've figured out like what type of new value you can bring through an innovation to your customers, right? You have to define like what's your intent to partnering and to doing that in a collaboration form. And people always ask me like when do you know that partnerships are actually like a serious option to pursue, and that you don't do it alone, but that you actually know that you need a partnership. And it's actually quite a sort of a simple puzzle that you can make for yourself, which I'll highlight now. And the puzzle consists of 4 pieces, and the first one regards functionality. So with functionality, you have to ask yourself, like, do your customers expect you to deliver this new form of value? Right? For instance, if we take the case of Nespresso, Nespresso, before they brought to market like the concept that they're famous for now and that everybody knows, they were actually a business-to-business company, and they were Nestlé was making their own coffee machines, right? But people actually don't expect from Nestlé that they will make their own machines, right? They expect the consumable. And by joining forces with Krups, for instance, one of the appliance manufacturers, they were actually able to come up with a better value proposition than they initially had, because Krups did have the expertise. So people didn't expect Nespresso to deliver both the machine and the coffee. They just wanted the coffee, and by combining forces, things turned out for the better for that business model. Another puzzle piece is you have to figure out market sizing when you're launching a new product. Right? You might have something ready to go, but is the addressable market that you're looking for large enough to actually be able to keep your ship afloat? And if it's not, then combining forces with a partner that has a complementary or like a similar type of customer base might start making sense. A good example of this is the collaboration between Facebook and Spotify, where Spotify used the Facebook platform to launch their music streaming app in the United States. And they were predominantly only active on the European continent, and they used Facebook to actually penetrate the US market. And they had complementarity in the types of users, and that got Spotify off to a solid start with their existing product. Another puzzle piece relates to time to market, and this applies to generally highly competitive markets, where that there are some competitors out there who are about ready to launch about similar type of features or products that you are, but that you'll get some advantage by being on that market first. An example of this is the taxi hailing app Lyft, which actually launched in China last year, and was in a sort of neck-and-neck race with Uber to do so, but Lyft partnered with a local taxi hailing app called a Chinese taxi hailing app called Didi. And although it didn't give Lyft like a direct brand presence in China, it does allow for like existing Lyft users that travel to China to actually hail a Didi cab through the Lyft app, right? So it got Lyft into that market, into the game earlier on, and they were able to bring that time to market back. Oh, sorry. And lastly, there's a puzzle piece relating to resources, because sometimes, well, most of the time actually, you don't have all the resources you need to actually create and launch a product to market. And you have to figure out how you can partner up with an organization that does contain those resources, those key things that you need to come to a quick launch. And resources would pertain to like skill sets of people or time or budgets to develop things yourself or not. An example of this would be the collaboration between the early collaboration between Tesla and Toyota in the United States, when Tesla was moving into their first sort of production of their famous Model S. So before the Model S, they were a company producing like small batches of small roadster cars, and they were doing that themselves. But they didn't have any knowledge on mass production of automobiles. And they used their collaboration with Toyota to learn from Toyota how they organized their production lines, and actually came to mass production of cars. And they used that knowledge to launch their Model S line. So in defining partnership intent, right, if you look at, it's like a puzzle, and if you can complete all these puzzle pieces yourself, then a partnership doesn't make sense, right? You're in the best position to actually build and launch yourself. But at the moment one of these puzzle pieces is missing, that is the moment when it already starts making sense to think of a partnership as one of your options of getting your product to market. So I think in that sense, the threshold for seriously considering a partnership and actively going out there and scouting and discussing with potential partners is there. So I've been talking about partnerships a bit, but what is a partnership actually? Like how would you define it, right? How would you describe it, if you will? And the way what's a useful way to look at it for me is to consider a partnership as a collaboration between two business models that create new form of value in an interdependent way. So you're looking at two business models that can function independently from each other, but through like voluntary collaboration, try to figure out a way of creating something new that will make them both work better. And this could be business models that are housed in two separate businesses, but it could also be two business models that are actually housed within the same business, right? Because, for instance, in large companies, you'd have siloed divisions, and you need equal amount of effort to figure out a partnership collaboration as you would between two separate companies. Despite like the potential and the low threshold for actually considering and thinking about partnerships, the designing and implementing partnerships is actually quite difficult. It's quite hard. And statistics like these from the Harvard Business Review are telling about like the dangers and perils that lie on that road in terms of partnership design and implementation, where 60 to 70% of corporate alliances fail. That's a grueling percentage, right? And you have to wonder, like, what's behind that? Why do they fail so much? And I think it boils down to a couple of factors. And I think culture is one of them. You see that, for instance, in this picture, where IBM was the incumbent company for personal computing and Apple was the challenger coming in. The partnerships they would have designed in that era would have been very precarious, right? There would have been a lot of hostility. But now, actually, they recently launched a quite promising partnership, I think 1.5 years ago, which has a better perspective because Apple has matured as a company and they're more at an equal footing. So I think culture has something to do with one of the failure risks of partnership. Then there's a factor of communication. This is a quote from a research paper by the godfather of open innovation and business collaboration, which is Henry Chesbrough. And he says that in his observation, there are like few companies that are able to actually explain like what their business is about, how their business model works, let alone that they're able to sort of understand and explain how a partner's or an outside organization's business model would work. Right? And that's also like a very precarious basis for actually setting up a collaboration when you have this misalignment and you don't have the tools and ways of communicating to you about how your partnership would work and benefit both your businesses. So conversation and language is also an issue. And lastly, what I see is that when an entrepreneur or practitioner turns to academics and consultancy for advice about partnering, it's also they are confronted with their next barrier, and that's they're presented with these types of quite sort of ugly diagrams, which are presented as a form of a menu card where they can sort of pick their outcomes in terms of their organizational forms for their partnership. So some companies would say, yeah, we only do business in collaboration form, in joint venture form, right? But if you're still trying to figure out like why you should be partnering in the first place and what you should be doing in your partnership, and you're presented with these types of outcomes, then those are not very useful constructs for figuring out what to do. So in order to come to a better understanding of partnerships and to come to a better mode of creative collaboration, I think we need to structure the conversation into like 3 topics or 3 questions that we need to address if you want to come to better partnerships. And I'll take you through these 3 topics one by one. The first question you have to ask is like, what does partnering contribute to our core strategy? Right? It seems like a very obvious question, but sometimes people just even skip this question, right? They're looking at a big brand and they see a lot of potential there, but they don't know from their own perspective why they're doing it. And to figure that question out from looking, what is our core strategy? How does partnering contribute to that? It's very useful to use the tool by Alexander Osterwalder called the Business Model Canvas, which is presented here, which is a model consisting of 9 building blocks with which you can describe sort of the blueprint of the core strategy of any organization. And you describe how value is created within your organization, how it gets delivered to the customer, and how your organization captures value back. And one of the building blocks in the Business Model Canvas is the key partnership building block here, highlighted on the left. With the key partnership building block, you describe how your partner would contribute to your business model and make your business model work better. So it's a great tool to figure out how a partnership can contribute to whatever it is you're doing with your business and how it would fit to your core strategy, right? So that's one part of the problem you need to solve. Then comes the question is, okay, we know what our partner can do for us, but like in what form, in what type of deal can we offer our partner to make that actually work, to make them contribute to what we're doing? And in order to understand what you can offer to your partner, you need to take into consideration both your business and your partner's business. You're actually looking at 2 business models and somehow navigating the space in between to connect those 2 business models. And navigating that space is a pretty a messy process where there's a lot of misunderstanding, as you've seen before. There's a lot of different perspectives going on. And there's actually not a tool available for mapping out and designing partnerships as there is for business models with the Business Model Canvas. And that's sort of encouraged me to design a structure for helping navigate that white space between 2 business models to create that partnership. And it consists of 4 building blocks. And I'll just take you through these building blocks, these building blocks, one by one. So like the first building block of a partnership relates to desired assets. That you know from yourself what type of value, what type of assets you're lacking from your own business that you don't have, but that you do want access to, right? Those are the things that you look for in a partner. So you have to define like what type of assets are you missing and what do we really need from our partner. And once you've defined that, then you can look at the other side of the equation, and that is what your counter offer would be. Like what can you offer to sort of connect with those assets that you desire from your partner? And you're looking for things that on the left and the right side can complement or enhance each other. And this is actually where the sort of famous term associated with partnerships, which is synergy, That's what's defined here by connecting elements, value elements from both businesses in these two building blocks. You're looking for that particular type of synergy. But synergy is not the only thing you're looking for, because there are a lot of partnership discussions that sort of have successfully been able to define what the potential synergies between the companies, but they haven't found a way of making those values mutually accessible. And that's done through the transfer activity. And this is also often skipped over, that people don't figure out or don't discuss like how they will make these values mutually accessible to each other, right? Because both companies have to be able to make use of these values that they put into the partnership. Once you are able to connect these value inputs from both businesses, that's when you sort of created a foundation for a partnership. And this is like a little value engine where value can exchange and flow freely from left to right. But the value engine has to also drive or propel something. And that is the last building block, which relates to created value, because in your partnership, you have to create a new form of value. And that's what you take back to your own business and apply to your own business to make it work better. So in all, you have 4 building blocks that sort of gives a framework or a structure for the content of a deal. And this tool together, I have dubbed the partnership canvas, and it works in a complementary way with the business model canvas. So in iterating of the building blocks again, what the partnership canvas does is prompt you to ask the questions what you're looking for in a partner, what your matching offer is, and how you will bring these values together. And lastly, you have to ask what type of output will be created for your business model, something that you can take back to your business model and apply to your own business. And you look at the partnership canvas in the context of between the white space between 2 business models to design the collaboration. So we've talked about these building blocks and the overall structure, but sort of what do the steps look like in terms of designing this deal, right? Designing the content. And you have to take into consideration that a partnership is always a matter of perspective, right? You're always looking at it from your perspective towards your partner. And when you tilt the partnership canvas in this way, as the visual shows here, you will see that the partnership canvas on the right, in the middle, and the business model canvas on the right together make sort of an arrow shape. It emphasizes the relation of thinking from the right to left in this instance. And I'll show you how the partnership canvas logic fits to the business model canvas logic and how you can design your deals. So firstly, the value offer in the partnership is something that's taken from your own business, right? It's your existing business. It's a thing that you have control and proprietorship of and that you can actually offer to your customers. And the desired assets are elements that are contained within the business of your partner. And this is something that your partner holds and that your partner would be interested to provide to you. And the created value is something that you take back to your business, to operationalize in your business to make it work better. And lastly, there's the step of transfer activity, where you try to connect the value inputs from both partners together, and transfer activity has to also result in this created value that you take back to your own business. On a small side note here, once you've defined like these desired assets that you're missing from your business, you can actually use that definition of desired assets to screen like a long list you might have of potential partners you can collaborate with. You can sketch out their business models, and you can sort of highlight and filter, if you will, for those desired assets, and then already come to like a pre-selection of shortlisted companies that have a greater potential for the successful collaboration. Right? Highlighted here by the colors that match versus those that don't. So use the desired assets as a way of screening for a potential match with a partner. I've been talking a bit about perspective and how a partnership would fit to our core strategy and what type of deal we think would make sense to a partner. But there's also the point of view of a partner. So again, we've been looking at it from right to left so far. But your partner also has a perspective on the collaboration, right? And they will have to think through a similar type of process that might come to a different conclusion through that. So you have to take that perspective into consideration as well. And that's done by sort of flipping the partnership canvas and making a new arrow which points from left to right in this case, right? Because that's what your partner will look for you for in collaboration with you. And here's where one of the neat features of the partnership canvas comes into play, because through using the canvas in an exploratory and iterative way and designing options for partnership, you can bring these perspectives closer together to eventually make a fit in perspective, a matching fit. And what do I mean by a matching fit in particular? What you're looking for is to figure out whether those assets that you desire from a partner, whether that is something that your partner would be willing to offer you. And you also have to figure out, on the other hand, whether the value that you want to offer your partner, that you think of is of value to your partner, is that something that your partner would desire or want from you? And lastly, you have to get alignment on the transfer activity. You have to come to a common understanding of how you will make these values mutually accessible to each other. But if you've done so successfully, then you will come to a whole picture of a partnership, which contains two business models that get augmented through an entity in between, in that white space, a partnership setup, which is able to create this new form of value and deliver on new innovation potential for both businesses. So this is what a partnership would look like in its entirety, with two tools, the business model canvas and the partnership canvas. We've been talking about essentially coming to the narrative for your partnership, right? This common language, this common understanding of what we should be doing together and how these two tools, the business model canvas and the partnership canvas, can facilitate that. But there's also a process that you can go through to actually design partnerships. And I'd like to take you through that process with an example. And this example concerns apples, and it's not the Apple we mentioned before, which makes the aluminium fancy unibody aluminium laptops, but it's actually edible apples as shown in this picture. We're going to focus on a case of collaboration between two fruit farmers. So before we delve into the case, I'd like to just give you a bit of context as to how farmers perform in a market. They're usually sort of part of a supply chain, where on the left hand you'd have a farmer, and then the next step would be some kind of an aggregator or a processor who would make products and then ship those to supermarket retailers, and they then sell that product on to the end consumer. Now, for many farmers, it would be lucrative if they would somehow be able to sort of cancel out the middleman and get direct access to supermarket retail, right? So that they can capture a bit of the margin in between. Because sometimes the aggregators or intermediaries don't add too much value. And this is a case about two farmers that are looking for a way of coming to this direct form of supply and have used a partnership to actually organize that for themselves. So let's begin with the first step of this partnership design process, which is to understand what the current situation is and how these two farmers operate their businesses. So we're looking at two businesses, two business model canvases, and we have to understand what's the current situation and how are they operating now. So on the left hand, we have a farmer that produces conventional fruits, nothing special, but in decent quality and abundantly available. And on the right hand side, we have a special fruit farmer that produces special varieties of fruits that are very rare, hard to come by, and but he also produces them in lower volumes. Now, both farmers use the same type of channels. They ship their products to the auction, and there they get bundled and auctioned off to the same type of customers, the supermarket retailers who buy their stuff at that auction. Now, for the special fruit farmer, I have to add a key resource that they use, which is a fruit grading machine. And the special fruit farmer uses this because he wants to be able to provide something that is a distinguishing offer at the auction. So he makes sure that he has adequate grading and packaging so that he can be sold under a separate slot in the auction, and avoids the risk of his fancy products landing on the bulk heap. And mostly he's able to do that, but it also quite often happens that his quality grade of products is not sold as such and actually ends up as a bulk product, and he ends up making a loss on the prices for his special fruits. So he's invested in the grading machine to try to mitigate that risk, but he's not too successful at that. Now, if you look at their desire, their intention for direct delivery to the supermarkets, the special fruit farmer has a feature that supermarkets are interested in, which is that he has a special offer, right? This farmer has products that you cannot find in other competing supermarket shelves. So it would be really great for this supermarket chain to have this on offer. The downside about the special fruit farmer is that the volume he has in terms of fruits are very low, and they're also quite inconsistent. And that's something that supermarkets trip on, because once they have a product on the shelf, they want to ensure that it's available consistently to customers of that supermarket. Now, going to the left, the features that supermarkets find attractive about conventional fruits is that they're the basic stuff that supermarkets should have lying on the shelf. There are certain varieties of apples and pears that people expect to be able to buy at a supermarket, and this farmer actually can supply that, and supply at high volumes at a consistent rate. The only problem this farmer has is that this farmer can only ship his product in mass shipment form, so big wooden crates with hundreds of kilograms of apples, and that's not really a very convenient form for supermarkets to sell their products. So that's a barrier for this person to actually set up a direct relationship with the supermarkets. So now that we sort of understand where both farmers are coming from and what their constraints are in terms of setting up direct channels with supermarkets, let's have a look at the design of a potential partnership. And we'll look at the design from the perspective of the special fruit farmer, because this was actually the person that took initiative for designing the collaboration. So in terms of the offer, this special fruit farmer would offer his special fruits and grading machine. And what he would be looking for is a match with conventional fruits, because if they were able to combine these elements into a single offering and grade them and sort them and package them so that they would fit into supermarket shelves, then it would become an attractive proposition for the supermarkets. So this is the essential synergy that this partnership is looking for. So they're looking for the transfer activity, actually combining and grading orders, and that would give them like the full stack offer of fruits, sorted, graded, and in the right volumes and consistently delivered. So the graded value would go back into the business model and turn into like the new value proposition that they could offer supermarkets. And that's where here visualized in the cartoony way would come in this explosive innovation potential that I mentioned before in the beginning, where direct shipment to supermarkets would finally be possible for the special fruit farmer. So that's a basic design that this special fruit farmer came up with and went to the conventional fruit farmer to figure out if he was also interested in this deal, and if he would look at this type of value creation in the same way. So they had to go through the next step of the design process, where they had to compare their perspectives and first check whether they were talking and seeing the same things. Right, so we're looking at it from right to left in the first instance. Now we have to figure out from left to right if we're looking at the same thing. Right, so looking at the partnership as a whole. So this is where we left off just before on the perspective of the collaboration. And through negotiating and discussions, ideally, and they actually did, they would come up with a comparative perspective where the desired assets would meet the value offer and they would have an agreement on the transfer activities. And the conventional fruit farmer would also see the value of this full stack of fruits on offer, which would also enable this direct shipment to take place. So what you see is that in the middle, you would have a form of integration, a unity of perspectives that arises from the comparison. So we've had all the steps now of coming to the narrative and joint understanding of the potential of collaboration, but we also need to become really sharp about like what the impact is of the partnership to the bottom lines of each partner's business model. And to come to this sort of form of evaluation, you have to perform two checks. The first check you perform is what I call the value check. What do I mean by the value check? With the value check, you look at the created value from your partnership, and you have to figure out like what implementing this created value in your business model will generate in terms of new revenues and in terms of the costs or investments that are associated with it to operationalize this value. Because having the value is one thing, but you have to put it to work for you, and that might cost you some investment and money. So looking back at the case we're working on, you can see that the impact of the full stack of fruits to both business models comes in the form of impact to the value proposition and indirectly to the direct shipment opportunity. Looking at the perspective of the fruit farmer's revenue streams and the impact of this created value on revenue streams on the right-hand side, the special fruit farmer would probably get higher prices because the intermediate is gone, right? But he would also get some form of benefit in revenues that he would have a lower risk of his fruits actually being sold as bulk as he did with the auction. So he actually has a higher volume of fruits that he can sell at a higher price. So it's a double whammy for the special fruit farmer. On the left-hand side, looking at the conventional fruit farmer, what he'd get out of it is predominantly, I think, higher prices for his product because the intermediary is gone, but the volumes that he would be selling would be the same as before. So just higher prices. Then there's an element of cost. And looking at the impact on cost structure, taking the conventional fruit farmer on the left, you would have probably not a lot of impact in terms of cost to this collaboration. It wouldn't impact the way he works. He just, instead of shipping his product to the auction, he would ship it to the grading machine of the special fruit farmers where the product would get shipped. So the impact there of operationalizing this created value for the conventional fruit farmer would be negligent. Looking at the cost structure of the special fruit farmer on the right, he would get some cost advantages from joint shipments, right? Because they're combining volumes, that gives some advantage there in terms of shipping costs. Now, the second check you need to perform in terms of evaluating the impact of your partnership is what I call the cost check. And with the cost check, you look at the cost of operationalizing your partnership for your business model. So you're looking at the transfer activities within the partnership and what it would cost to perform those transfer activities. So there, you'd likely need to conduct a new activity within your own business model, or you need to invest in a key resource to operationalize that. And that would have an effect on your cost structure. So looking at the case at where we left it, if you look at the impact of the combined orders, that is the transfer activity within the partnership, those would come to effect on the right-hand side, on the side of the special fruit farmer, because this person had the grading machine on his premises, and that's probably where the combining of orders and the combining of grading would take place. So this person would need to bump up his activities for his business model and actually invest more, or it would cost him a bit of more labor to fulfill these orders, which come in the cost structure here on the bottom left. And looking at the cost structure of the conventional fruit farmer, there would be no impact involved there. So what I've taken you through is essentially like a 4-step design process consisting of a first step of understanding 2 business models and the sort of context or constraints to achieving an innovation and how a partnership would potentially help resolve that. Then you come to a design, so a potential setup by which you can achieve this opportunity. Thirdly, you would have a phase of comparison where you create alignment between perspectives of partners. And lastly, you would come to an evaluation phase where you evaluate the impact of a partnership to the bottom line of both business models. Right? So a 4-step process for designing partnerships consisting of understanding, designing, comparing, and then evaluating your partnership designs. With that, I've come to the end of my presentation on partnerships. I hope it's been useful in giving you some tips and about thinking and working with partnership. And I'd like to leave you with a bit of homework to help you flex those partnership muscles if they haven't been exercised yet. And I'll have you look at this case of Ferrari and its sponsors. And at the face of it, it seems like you're just looking at a plain old advertising opportunity where putting your logo on the racing car would give these brands like a global audience, and they would be able to boost their revenues and customer base through that. But if you look at specifically what these the advertising companies do, you already sense that there is might be some kind of a relationship between what they do and what Ferrari stands for and what they accomplish. Right? For instance, if you're looking at Shell, right, they create fuels and innovate on new types of fuels. That might be something interesting that Ferrari could also use, right? And vice versa. Shell could use the Formula One racing platform as a way of innovating and experimenting with new types of fuels. So there's something more going on than just an advertising opportunity. There might be some partnership collaborations here. And there are a lot of these partnerships that you can explore here. So I would suggest taking the business model canvas, taking the partnership canvas, and try to figure out how these partnerships would work. And do fill me in on your results. I'd be very keen to hear them. And I wish you a lot of good luck with that. So that's what brought me to the end of my presentation. I'd like to thank you for your attention. You can get into contact with me on the details on the bottom left. Particularly, I'd like to point you to my LinkedIn group on partnership design, where I hope to rally a group of partnership practitioners to exchange experiences and also take questions there on issues or new opportunities they might have discovered through using the partnership canvas. So also on behalf of Ernst, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I hope to be in touch with you soon. And I'll quickly look now if I have some questions on the Google Hangouts. And if I don't, then I will close the presentation. Hang on, stop screen sharing. Okay, so I don't seem to have any questions that have been posed. So once again, have a look back at the contact details I left on my presentation. And yeah, I hope to be in touch and further conversation with you about partnerships and all the cool things that you can realize that through partnerships. So thanks again for your attention, and I hope to meet you again soon. Thanks. Bye.